To the world, is what's happening in Brazil good or bad? Is President Trump's approach to tariffs political strategy good or bad? Simple. Everything is good. And I'm not saying this because I'm a Christian and I believe that everything can be good. Rather, I'll give you a very, very specific and logical argument. For the first time, in probably close to 200 years, we, the people, the politicians, everybody, it's really arguing and questioning things such as separation of power, the power of the presidency or the lack thereof, and so many interesting things. Is there a deep state or is not? What is the role of the Supreme Court, of the courts themselves? In essence, is the truth about capitalism a truth or just a lie? In my point of view, even the tariffs in Brazil are forcing we, as the people, and our governments and world governments to question a lot of status quo. Is it Brazil important? Let's say a lonely congressman can really have an impact. Eduardo Bolsonaro is very close to Trump. Figueiredo, the grandson of a former president of Brazil, has been able to do something remarkable. I've worked in DC for about 8 months, and the closer you are to the president. At the time was Bill Clinton. So President Bolsonaro being mentioned over and over by President Trump, it's obviously a positive thing to Brazil. President Lula being able to make this into an internal problem, and the we versus an outsider argument has given him some additional political capital, or has it? I'm here not to give you precise opinions or my opinion. My only opinion about this time in the world is that it's an amazing time. Why? Because we are forced to really discuss, is freedom of speech important? And if it is, are we protecting it? In other words, what is the deep state? Are people really being helped? So we had in the 90s and 2000s a skyrocket stock market. Has this translated into wealth for the general public, or we call Main Street? Is it right to put tariffs on a country like Brazil, or is it wise? Has it been, let's say, have we deserved or not? Those are very important questions. The American experiment started in 1776. And you can disagree, but you cannot deny the effectiveness of President Trump in his second term. He is bringing to light what we can call a second American Revolution, or a Revolution 2.2 in a good sense, because if you read the words he meant by separation, about the structure, we never should have been where we are today, where the presidency has little or sometimes no power. And what is coming afloat about perhaps the influence of President Obama into his successor. We the people always knew there was something in between. The assassination of President Kennedy in '63, his brother following in '68, and so many conspiracies. There's a clear, how can I say, to the people, there are different interests. So when we talk about Brazil, US, or Israel, which I always try to bring as bring as examples because I do believe there's a triad into the promise given to Abraham by God. And when I say a promise, I'm talking about not only a religious or a spiritual, but also how we should live. America, and it was the promise of that city on a hill, a more perfect union, not under the control of a tyrant or a good king, because the issue with the king is that you can have a good king and then a bad king. And democracy is the ability for you to change from time to time who is in charge. So democratic values are important. These discussions are extremely important. And where Brazil comes in. My take on Brazil is we have been such an experiment for all these democratic values. We have always been the giant who never wakes up. So my point of view to Brazilians and to the international audience, if in fact we are able to see this because we are being censored, and there's no other word to say this. But if we can navigate the challenges Brazil is facing, the challenges we are facing as a nation or as a world together at this moment, will bring civilization to a better position. We will all grow up. Brazilians need to take into consideration their actions. And when I say actions, not their vote only. You should not expect to vote to the same politicians over and over again and expect different results. At the same time, we should also challenge and question some status quo perceptions, for example. So I believe everything has consequences. And if we cut the line, or if we do our, they say jeitinho brasileiro, which is this little, way of solving things, or going around the rules. And we do this as a country every day. We're proud, and we should not. We as a country, we should have a very different outlook. And we should start looking at how the outside's perceiving us. And the politicians, they're getting a wake-up call. And one of the reasons they're trying to censor free speech or the social networks or the internet is because more and more people are becoming immune to some of the propaganda. And on both sides, we're getting to a point, and I think, I believe both in the US and Brazil, that politicians, companies, or anyone will have to be honest and truth to their own belief. The more and more we are exposed to selling tricks or marketing schemes in the internet or on TV. When I say schemes, like how someone is forced to buy something or encouraged to buy something, or the truth about how people get into certain colleges or how people get into certain jobs, the more and more that idea that is beautiful, where we give is a meritocracy. Sorry for that. People, and we're not going to add it because that's not the point. People should be measured by the content of their character, not their skin. That was said in 1961 at the mall. The famous I have a dream speech. So we all should aspire to a more perfect union, not only in the US, but a more perfect union in France, in Germany, in Brazil, in Israel, everywhere. When I say we as a civilization, we are spending trillions of dollars trying to protect from each other. At the same time, we are being attacked by nature, let's put it this way. Whether or not you agree or not, we should be prepared to the changes in the environment, whether they're caused by human interaction or they're caused as natural. Because honestly, if you read the data, there's no real connection. The more CO2 we have, the more life on the planet there exists in the past when you look back. Will that work moving forward? I don't know. The same thing as an economist, we haven't tried what Trump is doing, not to that extent. And again, we're doing this in 2025. If we look at examples, and they're just examples in the past, the reality is he has been elected on those ideals, on those platforms. The democratic values prescribe that he has the right to try. The Senate and Congress can have their ability to stop or change. But at the same time, next year, there will be midterm elections. And if the people don't agree with the direction the country is in, they have the right and they have the duty to vote differently. So next year, there's an ability for the people in the US to change course both in the House and in the Senate, which can give either President Trump additional resources or he can lose control of both houses. But the fact is, President Trump, in about 6 months, have been one of the most effective presidents in history. And I should say, because I look into history. Moreover, he had the courage to challenge the status quo about diversification, companies that import and export and have a global supply chain. And the fact is that good or bad for America? Because in that statement is a very vague and superficial. Because it could be very good for companies. It could be very good for the stock market. But what about those people in Michigan or in Philadelphia? Different states. Let's talk about how are people working relationship in New York. So it is a very profound and complex question. And when the media really just answer, we're better off that way, even though you, the blue-collar worker, or the service worker, or even the white-collar worker, you have seen your purchasing power just decreasing. The ability to afford a house has just vanished for this new generation. Chaos is emerging. People really don't believe in America anymore. A lot of Americans are negative against their own country. And I can tell you, from someone who has studied in the US, lived for many years in the US, legally by the way, and who has experienced other countries, I tell you, you do live in a unique city on the hill. It's not perfect because there's no perfect union in the planet. We should together aspire to arrive on a more perfect union, but the rights and the protection you take for granted every day, and that's why when you have some immigrants that become a citizen, they defend America more than some people that were born, because when you're born into something, you don't really value. For the thousands, for the millions that have immigrated to the US since forever, the 1700s, Statue of Liberty is indeed something beautiful. But at the same time, we as people, we can turn to something beautiful. The rights, the ability to accept people that are being persecuted in other places, but then we make this into a bad thing. When Joe Biden leave it open, is it right or bad? I mean, right or wrong? But again, this is an amazing time to be alive because we are forced to look into all these questions, good or bad, and we will make a decision. And this decision, you may disagree to certain situations, but believe me, everything is good. Because even if it's a short-term negative effect, this will turn into something else. And unfortunately, we as humans always wait for chaos to really want to change something. Why was why were the Democrats able to put the pendulum all the way to the left? Why is the Republicans being able to swing all the way to the right? This is our fault. Everybody who believed that, no, my life is not affected by politics. Unfortunately, we can see that sometimes it is. That should not, or it must not stop us from doing our job as business people, as entrepreneurs, as workers. We should do our part. Take care of our own life, and most importantly, of our own family. The world needs change, and I believe this is an amazing time because we are not only experiencing a lot of changes, but we are being forced to look into ourselves and around us, whether this is good, whether Faria Lima was right or wrong when they supported current President Lula. God bless us all. God bless Brazil. God bless America. And again, tomorrow the sun will be up and we will have another opportunity, an even better union. Thank you.